If someone told me a month ago that my wife had a secret life, I would have laughed in their face. But now I wish I never found out the truth. One message. One mistake. It started with the little things. Laura had always been an open book. Leaving her phone on the counter, chatting with friends while I sat next to her, kissing me absent-mindedly while scrolling through social media. Now, her phone was always face down. She took it with her everywhere, the kitchen, the bathroom, even to bed. If I walked by while she was using it, she'd tilt the screen away, a forced smile stretching across her face. At first, I told myself it was nothing. I wanted to believe her when she said work was stressing her out. I wanted to believe her when she said she was just tired. But stress didn't make a person start wearing perfume just to run errands. Stress didn't make someone suddenly change their passcode. Stress didn't make someone stop touching their husband altogether. I started noticing other things too. The late nights. The sudden urge to hit the gym even though she never cared for it before. The carefully planned outfits. The way she stared at herself in the mirror before leaving the house. Studying every detail like she was preparing for someone else's gaze. My mind whispered the truth, but I ignored it. Because if I acknowledged it, I'd have to admit that the woman I had spent 7 years loving was slipping away from me. Then, one evening, I walked into the living room and saw her sitting on the couch, phone in her hands, smiling down at the screen. Not just any smile. Not the casual kind you give a meme or a funny text. It was the kind of smile she used to give me. And in that moment I knew. I didn't have proof yet. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know how far it had gone. But one thing was certain. Laura had a secret, and I was going to find out what it was. It happened so fast. Laura had been sitting on the couch, curled up in a blanket, scrolling through her phone like she always did. She barely looked up when I walked into the living room. "Want anything from the kitchen?" she asked casually, already standing. I shook my head. "I'm good." She gave me a quick smile before heading toward the kitchen, leaving something behind on the couch. Her phone. Unlocked. Face up. I barely had time to process it before the screen lit up, and a voice message started playing. A deep, male voice filled the room. "God, I miss you already. Last night was incredible. I can still taste you." My entire body froze. The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Last night, she had told me she was working late. She had come home exhausted, barely kissed me goodnight before going straight to sleep. But now I knew the truth. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. I could still hear the message playing, the voice dripping with intimacy. A voice that wasn't mine. I had two choices. 1. Pick up the phone, storm into the kitchen, and demand answers right now. 2. Play it smart. Stay quiet. Gather evidence. Find out exactly who the hell she was seeing. Footsteps. Laura was coming back. I had seconds to decide. I clenched my fists, forcing my breathing to stay even. Then, carefully, I reached down and flipped the phone face down. Laura walked in, sipping her wine, completely unaware. "Miss me?" she teased. I looked up at her, my face unreadable. I forced a small smile. She had no idea what was coming. I didn't sleep that night. Laura curled up beside me, her breathing slow and steady, like someone who had nothing to hide. But I knew better now. That voice message kept replaying in my head. "God, I miss you already. Last night was incredible. I can still taste you." I stared at the ceiling, my jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. Who the hell was he? As soon as I heard Laura's breathing deepen into sleep, I slipped out of bed and grabbed my laptop from the office. Time to find out. I plugged the number from the message into a reverse phone lookup site. Took a few seconds to load. Then, a name appeared. My stomach dropped. I read it twice, blinking, my hands going cold. It wasn't just some random guy. It wasn't a stranger. It was someone I knew. Someone we both knew. My heart pounded as I stared at the name on the screen. Memories started clicking into place. The subtle glances, the inside jokes I never understood. The way Laura always smiled just a little too much when she talked about him. It had been right in front of me this whole time. And now, I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to catch them in the act. I shut the laptop, inhaled deeply, and made a decision. Tomorrow night I would follow her. And when I did, there would be no more secrets. The next day felt like a test of endurance. I had never been good at pretending, but today I had no choice. Laura went about her morning like nothing had changed. She kissed my cheek before leaving for work, just like she always did. But I knew the truth now. I could still hear that voice message, echoing in my head like a curse. God, I miss you already. Last night was incredible. I can still taste you. Took everything in me to act normal. To eat breakfast. To text her something casual in the afternoon. To pretend I wasn't dying inside every time she picked up her phone and smiled at the screen. I waited. And then, at exactly 9:45 p.m., she made her move. The lie. Laura stretched her arms and let out a fake yawn. I'm exhausted, she sighed. I think I'll head to bed early. I glanced at her from across the room, my expression unreadable. Yeah? You feeling okay? She nodded. Just a long day. I might take a bath first. A bath, right? She had used the same excuse last night, right before she snuck out to be with him. I nodded, playing along. All right, I'll be in the office finishing up some emails. She smiled, kissed me softly on the cheek, and walked toward the bedroom. But I wasn't an idiot. I moved to the hallway and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then, just as I expected, I heard it. The soft click of the back door unlocking. I peeked through the curtains, and there she was. Laura wasn't in a bath. She wasn't in bed. She was sneaking out, slipping into her car, her face partially hidden beneath the hood of her coat. My stomach twisted, but my mind was clear. I grabbed my keys, slid into my car, and waited until she pulled out of the driveway. Then I followed her. The drive. Laura drove carefully, too carefully, like someone who didn't want to be noticed. She didn't take the usual route to her office. Instead, she weaved through side streets, making random turns, doubling back once, checking if she was being followed. Smart, but not smart enough. I stayed back, keeping enough distance so she wouldn't suspect a thing. And then, after 20 minutes of driving, she made her final turn. And my stomach dropped, because she wasn't going to work. She wasn't going to a friend's house. She was pulling into a motel. A cheap, run-down place at the edge of town. The kind of place where no one asked questions. She parked, checked her phone, and looked around, scanning the lot like a criminal before stepping out of the car. She walked toward room 207. And then, the door opened, and he was waiting for her. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. Because now I wasn't just suspicious. Now I had proof. She had been lying. She had been sneaking around. She had been sleeping with another man in some disgusting motel room while I sat at home like a fool. And the worst part? I knew exactly who the bastard was. I watched as she stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her. I could storm in right now, confront them, rip their perfect little fantasy apart. But no, not yet. I needed to know everything before I made my next move. And when I did, Laura wouldn't just lose me. She would lose everything. I sat in my car, staring at the motel room door like it was the gateway to hell. Room 207. Laura had walked right in, her head down, her body language tense yet eager, like she knew she was doing something wrong but couldn't stop herself. And him? He was already waiting for her. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to get out, to kick the door down and drag him out by the throat. But I didn't move. Not yet. I needed to see it with my own eyes. The waiting game. Minutes passed. Then more. I forced myself to breathe, to be patient, to let them dig their own graves. I checked my phone. 10:17 p.m. The motel parking lot was nearly empty. Just a few cars scattered around, headlights occasionally flickering in the distance. The neon sign buzzed overhead, casting an eerie red glow over the pavement. Inside room 207, my wife was with another man. My chest burned. I had replayed scenarios in my head 100 times, but nothing could have prepared me for this. The reality of watching Laura slip so easily into another man's arms. And it wasn't just some random fling, because I knew who he was. And that made it so much worse. The truth hurts more than lies. I didn't have to wait long. At 10:34 p.m., the curtains moved slightly, giving me my first glimpse inside. What I saw made my stomach turn. Laura stood close to him, laughing softly, comfortable,
Familiar.
and then she kissed him. Not just a quick peck. Not just a reckless, heat-of-the-moment mistake. It was deep, slow, intimate, like they had done this 100 times before, like she had whispered those same sweet nothings to me years ago. But now, they belonged to someone else. I felt my jaw clench so tightly my teeth ached. And then, like a final nail in the coffin, I saw something that destroyed me completely. Laura pulled away, looking into his eyes, and she said something. I couldn't hear it, but I could read her lips. I love you. The air in my lungs turned to stone. It wasn't just sex. It wasn't just lust. She was in love with him. I blinked. My vision blurred for a second, but I forced myself to focus. That was it. That was the moment the last thread snapped. She hadn't just cheated on me. She had replaced me. Recognizing the enemy. The motel room door opened slightly, and for the first time I got a full look at him. My stomach churned. It was him. Nick, my best friend. The man I had trusted for over a decade. The man who had stood beside me at my wedding, making stupid toasts about how we were perfect for each other. I felt like the world had tilted on its axis. Nick, of all people, I had trusted him. I had let him into my life, into my home. And this is what he did to me? My vision went red. I could have stormed in right then and ended it all. But I didn't. Because now I wasn't just going to expose them. I was going to destroy them both. And neither of them would see it coming. I gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. My entire body was shaking. Not just from rage, but from something worse. Betrayal. Laura. Nick. The two people I trusted the most. I replayed it in my head, her whispering, I love you. The way she kissed him like he was her everything. Like I was nothing. My breathing was uneven, ragged. Every instinct screamed for me to get out of the car, march up to room 207, and rip his smug face apart with my bare hands. I wanted him to feel the pain I was feeling. I wanted her to feel humiliated like I did. I wanted them both to suffer. But I didn't move, because deep down I knew something they didn't. I was in control now. They had been playing their little game behind my back, thinking they were safe, thinking I was too blind, too trusting, too weak to ever suspect anything. But now I held all the power, and I wasn't going to waste it on some impulsive, rage-fueled outburst. No, I was going to plan this perfectly, the first step of revenge. I forced myself to drive away. Not because I was letting them off the hook, because I had work to do. I got home, parked in the driveway, and sat there in the dark for a long moment, gripping the steering wheel. The house I had worked so hard for, the home I had built for us, suddenly felt empty. I stepped inside, shutting the door behind me. The silence was suffocating. The framed wedding photo in the hallway caught my eye. Laura, dressed in white, looking at me like I was her world. I laughed. A hollow, bitter sound. She had lied that day, too. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages, my mind racing. I had proof now. I had seen it with my own eyes. But how I handled this, that was what mattered. I could go for exposure. Blast the truth out to her family, our friends, everyone who had ever believed in our perfect marriage. I could go for financial ruin. Make sure she walked away from this with nothing. Legally rip everything out from under her feet before she even realized what hit her. Or I could go for pure destruction, something neither of them would ever recover from. I leaned against the kitchen counter, staring at my phone. Then I made the first move. I sent a text to Nick's wife. Hey Jess, we need to talk. Now. A chain reaction begins. 15 minutes later, my phone lit up. Jessica. What's going on? Is Nick okay? I hesitated for half a second. Then I typed, check his messages. Look for one from Laura. A long pause. Then, Jessica. What? Just do it. And call me after. I set my phone down and exhaled slowly. Because once Jess found out, Nick's life was going to come crashing down just like mine had. And that was just the beginning. The trap is set. It was 1:30 a.m. when I heard Laura's car pull into the driveway. I sat in the dark, waiting. She walked in a few moments later, kicking off her shoes, stretching, completely relaxed, as if she hadn't just spent the night in another man's arms. I clenched my fists. Not yet. Stay calm. She turned toward the living room and froze when she saw me sitting there. Oh, she gasped, clutching her chest. You scared me. What are you doing up? I looked at her for a long moment. She had no idea that her entire world was about to collapse. I forced a small smile. Couldn't sleep. She walked over, pressing a light kiss to my forehead, like I was an idiot who would never suspect a thing. I'm exhausted, she murmured. I think I'll just go to bed. I nodded, watching as she turned away. But before she could disappear down the hallway, I called out. My voice calm, steady, unreadable. Oh, by the way, I said, Jess is going to call you in the morning. Laura stiffened. She turned back slowly, her face carefully neutral. Jessica? Nick's wife. I leaned back into the couch, stretching my arms behind my head. Yeah. I told her to check Nick's phone. The color drained from Laura's face. And in that moment, I knew she finally understood. She wasn't the one in control anymore. For the first time in months, Laura was speechless. I watched her, arms crossed, leaning back on the couch like I had all the time in the world. She blinked rapidly, her mind racing, thinking, calculating, trying to figure out exactly how much I knew, how much damage had already been done. But I wasn't giving her anything. I just sat there waiting for her to crack. James? She finally said, forcing a small laugh. What are you talking about? She tried to sound casual, but I saw the tremor in her hands. The way she shifted her weight, uncomfortable in her own skin. I tilted my head, letting her drown in the silence for a few more seconds before delivering the first real blow. I know, Laura. Her fake smile froze. Know what? I let out a slow breath. I know about Nick. Boom. Her entire body tensed. The color drained from her face. That was the moment she realized this wasn't a guess. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't just paranoid. I knew everything. Laura swallowed hard. That's ridiculous. She forced out a laugh, her voice a little too high-pitched. Nick? My God, James. He's your best friend. I didn't correct her. Instead, I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my screenshots, and turned the screen toward her. Nick's number, dozens of texts, her messages, some flirty, some explicit, some downright disgusting. And then, the final one, the one that had ended any doubt in my mind. Laura, I love you. I just wish I had met you first. I didn't even look at her. I just watched as her entire world crumbled in real time. She stared at the screen, her lips parting, but no sound came out. Then, pure panic settled in. James, I cut her off. My voice was sharp now, and I saw her flinch. She was cornered. And for the first time in our entire marriage, she was finally afraid of losing me. The lies start falling apart. She dropped onto the couch beside me, hands shaking. Listen to me, she pleaded. It's not what you think. It was a mistake. A moment of weakness. I let out a humorless laugh. A moment. I gestured at the phone, scrolling through months of texts. You've been having moments for a while then. Her face contorted. I never meant to hurt you. I gave her a long, slow look. And for the first time, I let my rage show. You didn't care if you hurt me, Laura. You just didn't think you'd get caught. Her lower lip trembled. James, please. We can fix this. We can go to therapy, we can. I held up a hand. She was done talking. I had let her have her say. I had let her lie, manipulate, play her little games. Now it was my turn. The ultimate checkmate. I stood up slowly, walking to the kitchen, opening the fridge like I was casually grabbing a drink. Like this wasn't the moment that would destroy her life forever. You want to fix this? I asked, popping the cap off a beer. Yes. She nodded quickly, desperate now. Yes, James. Please. I took a slow sip, staring at her over the rim of the bottle. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a thick manila envelope. I tossed it onto the coffee table. She eyed it, confused. What is that? I took another sip, waiting. She hesitated, then reached for it with trembling fingers. She opened the envelope, pulled out the first document, and her entire body locked up. She recognized it immediately. Divorce papers. She inhaled sharply, choking on a sob.
James, no.
No, 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 please. I ignored her, pulling out my phone. Oh, I said, my voice mocking. And just so you know, Jess knows too. Her breath hitched. She knows. I gave a slow nod. Yeah, I had a nice little chat with Nick's wife earlier tonight. She checked his phone. Found all of this. I gestured at my screenshots. Laura gasped, her entire world crashing down around her. Oh, and another thing, I added. Jess has a family group chat, with Nick's parents, his sisters, even his boss. And she sent them everything. Laura looked like she was going to throw up. I checked my watch. By now, I'd say Nick's probably getting kicked out of his house. I turned back to her. And you? I let my voice drop lower, colder. You're about to lose everything. Tears poured down her face, but I felt nothing. She had her fun. She made her choice. And now, she was paying for it. I grabbed my keys off the counter and walked toward the door. She stumbled after me, grabbing my arm. James, where are you going? Please, we can fix this. I turned to her, my face unreadable. Laura, I said, we're already done. And with that, I walked out. She screamed my name, but I didn't look back. Because by the time she woke up tomorrow, she'd realized this wasn't a bad dream. This was her new reality. And she'd have to live with it. Every single day. I walked out the front door for the last time, leaving Laura behind in the wreckage of her own making. She didn't follow me. Not because she didn't want to, because she couldn't. She was too stunned, too broken, too overwhelmed by the realization that this was real, that I was gone, that she had lost everything. I got into my car, gripping the steering wheel as I took one last look at the house we had built together. The house she had desecrated with her lies, her betrayal, her selfishness. Then, without another thought, I drove away. The fallout. By morning, Laura's world had completely collapsed. She woke up to find her phone blowing up with messages. Not from me. Not from Nick. From everyone else. Because Jess? She had made sure everyone knew. Nick's family, their mutual friends, even some of Laura's coworkers. No one was left in the dark. Screenshots, voice messages, hotel receipts. It was all laid bare for the world to see. She tried calling Nick. No answer. She tried texting Jess, begging for mercy. Jess left her on read. Her mother didn't pick up. And when she checked our joint bank account, empty. She had no one, no support, no money, no way to talk her way out of this. She was truly alone. And that's when she finally broke. Her last desperate attempt. By noon, my phone buzzed. A call from an unknown number. I didn't answer. A few minutes later, another. Then, a text. Laura. James, please just talk to me. I stared at the screen, completely detached. Another message. Laura, I made a mistake. I lost everything. I don't know what to do. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. She wasn't reaching out because she loved me. She wasn't reaching out because she regretted what she had done. She was reaching out because she wanted me to save her. But Laura wasn't my problem anymore. I deleted the messages without replying. Then I blocked her number. And just like that, she ceased to exist. 1 year later. It's funny how quickly life moves on when you cut out the poison. I got promoted. I traveled. I met someone new. Someone who actually respected me. And Laura? She never recovered. Nick divorced Jess, but he didn't end up with Laura. He left town, leaving her behind with nothing but her shame. She lost her job. She lost her reputation. She lost the life she thought she could always fall back on. And the last I heard, she was still alone, sitting in the ruins of her own selfishness, wishing she had never crossed me. Final thought. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes the best revenge isn't yelling or fighting or trying to make someone suffer. Sometimes it's just walking away and letting them destroy themselves. I still can't wrap my head around this. What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments. I need to know I'm not crazy.